Hello, welcome. Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 10, the household as a cooperative conflicting unit, we are going to start our lecture on topic the socio-economic dynamics of the household. The systematically inferior position of women inside or outside the house in many societies points to the necessity of treating gender as a force of its own in development analysis. The economic hardship of woman-headed household is a problem both of female deprivation and of family poverty. Furthermore, females and males in the same family may well have quite divergent predicaments, and this can make the position of women in the poorer family particularly precarious. Over the last few decades, there has been substantial documentation from a women's studies perspective of the gender bias in the household, which lead to measurable negative outcomes for women. In view of the dominance of patrilineal kinship over the large part of India, it is an obvious step to ascribe to it the devaluation of daughters and the son preference, which are silent feature in contemporary Indian families. But this is too broad a generalization to capture nuances and retail a cutting edge. It is necessary to synchronize the family household to see in what ways and to what extent it is the site for working out of rules and principles not derived from descent or even from kinship. There is a need to keep in mind the distinction between the household as a site of gender bias, family as an agency for socialization of the members to accept and transmit the bias, and as an monitoring agency responsible for punitive action, and the ideology of the descent system as a source of de-evaluation of females, insofar as it is permeates the family household. The household as an concrete institution is not only partly constituted by patrilineal kinship. Other traditional and modern institutions contribute to the articulation of patriarchy. These include caste-based institutions and their ideology, the state and its policies, religious institutions, economy, media, thus the culture and society at large. Insofar as they assume and project certain ideas of the male and female, these inevitably percolate into the matrix of the family household. The source of these ideas is not necessarily the decent system. Patriarchy has often been used to describe a society which at various major institutional level codes and expresses male dominance, and in such a society kinship is often but not necessarily patrilineal. There is no doubt that the entitlements to family resources are based largely on the kinship rules, and in this regard patrilineal is unbalanced and works to the disadvantage of women. But the specific character of patrilineal in India also reflects what could be called cultural concepts and values, such as the idea of marriage as destiny, the spiritual merit of dana, particularly kanyadan, the auspiciousness of the married woman and the inauspiciousness of the widow, the Anuloma Pratiloma rule of the intercaste marriage, the idea of transformation of a woman's body upon marriage, and the sacramental character of her ritual incorporation into the affinal household. There are not inherent in patrilineal system, but are specific to Hindu India, and indef- they have definite implications for women's life trajectories in the subcontinent. More critically, many aspects of the workings of the household, including what can be called family ideology, are derived from the exigencies of caste. There are also systematic differences among the developing countries in the survival rates of females and males. Asia has a sex ratio of only 950, but Africa comes closer to Europe and North America with a sex ratio of 1020, indeed considerably higher than in sub-Saharan Africa. Even within Asia, the sex ratio is higher than the unity in some regions such as Southeast Asia, 1001, but much lower in China, India, Bangladesh, and West Asia, and in Pakistan. There is substantial variation within a given country. For example, in India, the sex ratio varies from 870 to 880 in Haryana and Punjab to 1030 in Kerala. It is clear that had the average African sex ratio obtained in India and then given the number of men, there would have been about 30 million more women in India today. The corresponding number of missing women in China is about 30 million. The cumulative contrast of sex-specific mortality rates, not unrelated to the social and economic inequalities between men and women, find expressions in these simple statistics, which form something like the tip of an iceberg, much of which is hard to observe. Later studies and Bose and Shiva highlight the sharper unfavorable differences in sex ratio over time and regions in India. There is no dearth of evidence on the gender asymmetry ethos in the contemporary scenes. John Hudernott contributes to the literature in this area, presenting evidence from the Philippines and Bangladesh. Hudernott points out that nutritional adequacy in the household level correlates poorly with that at the level of the individual household member. Data, the data he cites show that of the individual comprising study household, a substantial proportion were subject to relatively low food intake even when aggregate level of household nutrition were high, and further that within households food allocations favored male over female. Disparities such as these have of course been explained in terms of social and cultural manifestation of gender discrimination. Hodinot shows in his paper that there is another dimension involved as well. In making his point, he invoked the economic principle of efficiency, equality, and bargaining. Of course, the first makes for a distribution of food such as that the household nutritional resource accrues preferentially to its economically more productive members. This forms the basis of food allocation deliberately titled in favor of males. Maximization of the household's productivity and income is the rationale here. One implication of this, the author points out, that is school meals program targeted at girls can be threatened when household compensate by reducing the quantities of food given to girl at home and relocate the surplus to the family's economically more productive members. Gender discrimination in the household is thus overlaid with an economic rationale, but the principle of efficiency is not inexorable, for there are times when it is eclipsed by the principle of equality. Evidence from the rural India suggests that the former is likely to operate less during seasons of plenty, at which times equality considerations are likely to come to the fore. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.